Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Jack Milner. Jack is an award-winning communications coach. He has trained the world's best-selling professional speakers and provides organizations with the tools to influence, persuade, and engage, whether through storytelling, presenting, or communicating with teams. He's the author of a new book called Virtual Presentation Mastery: Tips from the Coach to Some of the World's Best Speakers and Me, and we'll get into that. COVID has forever changed the way we communicate. I'm excited to have Jack on the show to help us understand how to become better virtual presenters. So Jack, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, John. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you. And I'm excited about this topic because I think the world has changed and we have to change with it as leaders. So I'm looking forward to learning from your expertise in this area. So the first thing I wanted to start off with is, how does a comedy writer, performer, and director become an award-winning communication coach? What was the shift? How did that transition throughout your career?
Yeah, well, it was accidental, John. So I ran a comedy company, did comedy performances, directing and stuff, and I also used to do comedy improvisation workshops. And this is a long time ago, and I did this for a while. And then a venue said to me, Jack, we'd like you to run a stand-up workshops. And at the time I said, well, I don't think you can teach stand-up. You know, you're either funny or you're not, sort of thing. And then they said, well, we'll pay you twice as much as normal. and I said, well, clearly you can teach stand-up. And I found that you could, really, by just doing three things, which actually I do in my workshops now, which is help people take away the stuff that gets in the way, give them some tools, mostly actually to build confidence, and then make sure it was fun. And in the UK at the time, there were loads of people doing this in the US, but in the UK at the time, was hardly anyone doing it. So very quickly, I was working with the National Theatre, Channel 4, ITV, English National Opera, etc. And that raised my profile. And in turn, it was businesses who came to me. In fact, one of the first companies was Citigroup in London, and they came and said, look, can you work with our analysts, because we want them to be less boring. and so it was business seeing the link between stand-up improvisation, or the writing stuff, and business, that comedy stuff, and business communication.
Interesting.
Long before me.
Yeah. So your company is Stand Up and Deliver, which I see the logo on the screen. What is it that you do? Like, what do you do to help leaders? What do leaders and companies come to you trying to fix or trying to do differently?
Usually, obviously, they're coming because they want to be better as speakers or pitching or whatever, that communication stuff. But why they come to me in particular, I guess, is because they want a bit of that more modern, natural, human approach that a stand-up typically has. So they're not always, in fact, quite frequently, they're not particularly looking to be that funny. And actually in business, I think being playful and occasionally humorous is probably enough, actually, for most. You don't need to be, if you want to see a comedian, go and see a comedian. But they come for that the way that a comedian can connect with an audience, break stories down into something short, succinct, and punchy. It's that side of things.
Interesting. We talked about it a little early before we started the recording, but I spent 22 years in corporate, and I saw a lot of really bad speeches. And we're not talking virtual, we're talking, in person, but they were terrible. I mean, most senior managers were absolutely dreadful when it came to doing presentations. And it was death by PowerPoint. And it was, slow and dry and humorless, and just everyone hated it. So you actually work with teams to try to take this dry technical, like you talked about these analysts, take this technical dry information, but you try to you help them make it more memorable and engaging. So What are some things that you do, like before we get into the virtual side, if you just talk about presentations in general, what are some things that you work with to make them more engaging and memorable?
I guess there's a few things, but um, there's some obvious ones which are not. None of it's rocket science, really. So quite often, I remember working with a guy who ran this big um, car rental organization, but he did it for corporates, massive corporates. And he did his presentation to me, and it was, loads of slides and really quite dull. And I didn't understand it, to be honest. And so at the end of it, I said, "So, now you finished that. It's quite interesting. So what was that? Was that all about?" And he went, "Well, it's this and this and this." And I said, "So, is what you do any good?" Because I wasn't clear. And he went, "Oh, it's absolutely amazing. I've worked across the world in this sector, and we are the best by a long way. It's amazing." And I said, none of that was in, none of that stuff was in there. And he went, "Is it a bit much to put it in? Should." And then I sort of, there was a few of his team there, and I said, "Well, what do you think, guys?" And they went, "Yeah, put it." So it was there. It was just that I guess the thing of, well, in business, can I really talk like I don't want to do people down, but do I really want to talk like, should I talk like a human being? And so one exercise I do with people sometimes, and please interrupt me, John, sometimes I can just carry on. One exercise I do is to say, okay, well, look, do the same bit of your presentation again, but now you're going to do it as though I'm 10 years old or 11 years old.
Yeah, yeah.
And they'll start off and they'll often do quite corporate, but a little bit simplified. I say, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm 11, really confused. And that forces them to really think about what they're saying, really take out all jargon, any jargon, and take their time and communicate.
Mm.
And it's the skill. They already have the skill. It's just something has got in the way. That's what, I mentioned, helping people take away the stuff that gets in the way. And then they'll start using analogy, they'll start using story, they'll start listening as well, because they're watching the person. Do they understand? Is it clear? And I think one of the biggest problems you have with any sort of big presentation or leadership presentation, but particularly in virtual, is that we assume as the speaker or as the leader, you go, well, I am in charge. I'm here to share my vision, my strategy, my ideas, and they're very, very good indeed. And once I've shared it, that information has landed and is understood, and therefore it will happen.
Mm.
And I will leave, and there'll be a round of applause, and it's unlikely anyone will disagree with me, and the job is done. But sadly, you've made a number of assumptions, and it probably hasn't.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, that's
and
exactly it. Yeah. I learned that. I was a plant, basically running manufacturing plants for most of my corporate career. And I did monthly all employee meetings. So every month I spoke to a group of people that weren't interested in what I was talking about. So you learn through, years and years of doing it, is like, how do I connect with these people? How do I leave them with something that they're going to remember? But the other side of it is, as you mentioned, communication with employees is you got to do it from multiple times in multiple different formats. You don't just say it one and you're done. So it's got to be something that you communicate over and over again. If it's your mission or your objective for the month or what have you, you got to do as many ways as you can. And speaking in front of a group is just one of the many tools a leader has. And I think you're right, though. Some leaders think one and done. I've said my piece, you heard my, carry out my mission, and then they're
Yeah, yeah.
off. And but it takes a lot more than that. And I think you touched on something too, is being empathetic with your listeners and noticing the positive interactions. Are they nodding their head? Are they looking at you? Are they paying attention? Or are they looking down at their phone? Are they, in some cases, have they fallen asleep? Which that happens a lot too in corporate meetings.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah. Well, let's like switching gears a little bit. Like, how has what have you seen? How much has business communication changed now since we've gone through this COVID? And now we're in this post-COVID world. How has it changed, and what should we be thinking about differently based on the fact that things have changed?
Well, certainly in the UK, and I'm guessing maybe even more so in the US with bigger distances, people just are really reluctant now to do a 2 or 3 hour commute for a 1 hour meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, that was quite common. You'd say, okay, it's important, you need to be here for the meeting. Could we do it virtually? No, that won't work.
Yeah.
So that was pre-COVID. So yeah, we'll spend £500 on return train tickets and you will attend the meeting. And now we're far more confident about it's okay to have a Teams or a Zoom. So it has, I hope I'm answering the question here. But I think, yeah, things have changed in that we are much happier to use the technology. We're no longer scared of it, et cetera, et cetera. But I think also there is at the same time, there's a real hunger for face-to-face. You can, I mean, I'm doing some face-to-face with a client tomorrow morning. It's just a one-to-one, and we could easily do it. We could easily do it virtually. So it is an extra 2 hours travel for me in and out of London. But yeah, we're both really looking forward to it because all our previous sessions have been online. So I think there's a real hunger for face-to-face, and yet we've accepted that an awful lot of business communication has to be through this two-dimensional form.
Yeah, I think you're right. And what and I think in a lot of ways it's kind of nice to have this this tool that we didn't have before, or at least we were probably afraid of it, right? I think COVID forced us to use this tool more. So senior managers now were learning how to operate Teams and Zoom and all this technology with and there's a lot of been funny stories where people have like a strange background or they've done some animation they can't figure out how to turn off. There was a lawyer in the US that had a cat face on, and he was appearing before a judge and he couldn't figure out how to turn it off, which again, I can just see senior managers, guys that have been have always had people do things for them, now have to figure out all this technology themselves in the early stages of COVID. Well, now 2.5 years into it, we're sort of used to it. This is like how we do business. And so I think it gives us a lot more options. When I was working in corporate, we used to fly over every month to Europe for an 8-hour meeting, and then I'd fly back. So I'd go over 8-hour meeting and I'd fly back. And that just was normal. It was normal once a month flying over to Europe for an 8-hour meeting, but we could have done, and all this wasn't available then, but this is such a powerful way to be able to have those discussions. And then, without having to do all the traveling and all the, as
Yeah.
the traveling is, you go through all these different things to get to a place, and it's usually, and it's stressful by the time you finally get there and have the meeting. But I think you're right. I think people are longing to have those face-to-face. And I know, like, we had our first we had a big industry conference, and it was so exciting. Like right after COVID, everybody was like so glad to see each other. We hadn't seen each other in 3 years, and it's kind of neat to have that face to face. But so as we go into like virtual presentations now and virtual meetings, what are some like mistakes that you've seen, or things that people are doing generally wrong when it comes to it? What are some worst practices that you've seen or people have talked about?
Yeah, that's a good question. because there's been some improvements
Yeah.
in the last 2.5 years from when it first started. Most people were getting acquainted with it, but I would say now the biggest is energy
Mm.
and having a conversation with the camera. So yes, quite a lot of people could have infinitely better microphones,
Yeah.
for instance, or less echoey space, and there's things you can do about that. But the big one, I think, still, I attended quite a big conference a few weeks ago. I won't say who it was, but and it was just gobsmacking how because it sounds like in my position, I don't want to slag people off, but so boring, so and lack of energy, and uh, across the board, pretty much, and you think, well, you have to fake it a bit. It is awkward, you talk
Yeah.
to you're doing a keynote, or you're doing a webinar, and you're not employed to be a TV presenter, and suddenly you sort of effectively are.
Yeah.
But you have to look at the camera, and you have to put in that little bit of energy, because yes, it doesn't feel authentic. But then I'll say to people, because they'll say, "Oh, Jack, it's not very authentic if I start putting in energy, because this is how I feel. I'm hating this. So this is me authentic, because this is awful." And then you say, "Yeah, but when you finish and I ask you how it was, and you'll go, oh, right, it was a bit rubbish, and I could have done this better, and I could have done that." Then you come to life.
Yeah.
You've stopped presenting. And that version of you is the real you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you were talking to a group of 50 people in a room, would you talk to them like, so
Yeah. Yeah.
let's move to slide number 6, just a moment.
Oh yes. Oh, just the way you're doing it right now is what I saw in the early stages of COVID was that, you didn't get the full face. You got part of their head or the ear. They were looking at another screen, and
Yeah.
yeah, I think you're right. And they forgot that, the camera is actually another person. So the camera is the person you're trying to talk to. And it's
The
hard to
eyes of
get.
the audience.
Yeah, the target it's the audience. And one of the things, as a speaker and a teacher, I did a lot of virtual speaking and teaching during that time. And one of the things is I tend to be an empathetic speaker. I try to sense the crowd, who's listening, who's not paying attention. I move to the other side of the room when I see some people kind of nodding off, and I try to, but when you're doing it in a virtual setting, it's we're going to talk about this. It's 2D, right? And so you have all these little boxes, and it's really hard for me to sense like how people are feeling, or how are they responding. Are they paying attention? Because you have all these little tiny boxes, and it's really hard to tell. And so I struggled in the beginning, until I sort of said, okay, well, I've got to sort of, I'm not an actor, but I have to act in front of, like, if like a person
Mm.
was there as part of it. Was hard to get used to, but once I did, it was like, okay, I can do this now. I understand how to do it. But
Yeah.
I like what you talked about, this idea of how do you create a 3D version of yourself in a 2D world. Now, this is something that I've never heard anyone talking about. So how can you talk about this idea of, like, kind of leaping out of the screen? And you also talk about this idea of a power of random. So I was kind of curious, how do we become a 3D version in a presentation versus a 2D flat, a box on a
Yeah.
on a Zoom call, if you will?
Well, one thing is that when you're in a when you as we've been here for the last 20 minutes, we're in our boxes, and it can become very easy. There's actually I'm trying to remember the name of the actor. Damn, I can't remember his name. Anyway, it'll come to me. Uh, who does this brilliantly? The more that you can put the animation in, but it has to be it has to come from an authentic place. But I mean, I'm quite animated. Doesn't mean everyone one is, but you've got to, in face to face, you don't have to make an effort to
Mm,
be human. You just are. Yeah, 99% of us do not have to make an effort to be human in a face-to-face. But in virtual, you have to fake some of that. I'm being I'm being human. And sometimes, when you're with your friends or colleagues, you don't need to worry about that because you just do it. You're comfortable in the online environment, you get each other, etc., etc. And there's laughter, there's banter. But otherwise, you have to add some, sprinkle it in there
Mm.
deliberately, and enjoy the audience and give that impression of that's where you are. So one thing I do, for instance, at the beginning of a session, if I'm working with a group of people, is I'll get them to do an exercise which forces them away from the camera and forces them into doing something that's slightly random and a little bit, oh, we're moving around. I'm moving around the office now. I hadn't planned this at all. He's asking me to find some things, or he's asking me to do something, or I've had people up. I said, okay, I'm gonna play a bit of music, and we're all gonna dance to the music. I hope this is not freaking out people as I say this. We're gonna dance to the music in different styles, not because that's how we're going to do the whole session, but I just want to help people free up and move away from, I've been looking at this bloody thing for hours after hours after hours, and you are an interruption in my day. And that's one of the biggest problems we have. So typically, if you're presenting, the person you're presenting to, before they were watching you, they were watching something else, watching a Word document, an Excel sheet, a Facebook video, or something, emailing, blah, blah, blah. You come in, you're an interruption.
Yeah.
And they look again at the screen. And then you start talking, and it's chat, and here's a slide, and here's another slide.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they've had years of it as well now. And then they go, okay, I'll finish. I'll turn off I'll mute, because that's a polite thing to do. And if I look occasionally up like this, it looks like I'm watching. I'll just do my email, finish my email. And if something interesting happens, it says something interesting, I'll listen for a bit and I'll get back to that. And so if you can pull them away from that into, that's why I emphasize grabbing the audience is really super important. There are occasional organizations where they go, really, we don't want to be grabbed.
Yeah.
We expect everyone. I had this. We expect people, for instance, to do training and do their work at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
I've had people say, that's what we're expected to do. So they don't want, but that's a tiny minority. Most people would love to be grabbed. Most people would love to be drawn in, and for their time to have real value and to get something meaningful from the conversation. So yes, it's partly the energy and the intent of, I've got to put a bit of fizz in here. Yeah, but not, because I can imagine might be a few people listening going, well, I'm not a fizz person, really. I'm
Yeah.
not naturally. It's no, absolutely. But you put in the you as if you were talking to people you get on with in in around a table having a coffee and a chat. Put that person who is passionate about sharing a story, put that person on the screen. And that is enough, but that's a hell of a lot more fizz than most people do. And then the next thing is you have to be clear on the value to your audience. So the audience goes, it's going to be worth my while. I'm going to get a lot from this. I'll listen.
Yeah, yeah. Because I think, in a physical meeting or a physical presentation, you're going to have people that they have no choice but to pay attention. They're sitting in a chair. If they look at their phone, everyone's going to see it. So they're sort of forced to pay attention. But I think it's more difficult if you're trying to present virtually and they have their computer monitor here and then they just bring up their email right beside your thing and they're just doing their email and they nod a couple times and they pretend like they're listening, and it's really hard for the presenter to know that they've completely disconnected from the conversation. So I think more than even in a physical presentation, the virtual, you have to keep their attention if you want them not to just jump on their email list or their to-do list or what have you, because this can be easily distracted, because this is they're looking at their screen where they do all their work, and then and then your face is there, and you're bothering them through their work day, right? So I got to get
And
back to my
that's it.
work. I'm going to
That's it.
minimize it,
That's it.
right? Yeah.
And you know that if you, if you mention, for instance, if you say, "Oh, and Churchill did this," da 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 da, that half of them, if they are listening, will start going on Wikipedia. Oh, that's interesting.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've seen that before.
Because
Yeah,
they
yeah,
can, they can
yeah,
go anywhere in the world
yeah,
while
yeah,
listening to you, and
yeah.
that's okay. You need to embrace a bit of that.
I did a couple of training sessions this during COVID where we used some of the surveys, and we asked a question to have people answer in the chat as a way to get them to actively participate in the conversation,
Mm.
and as a way. So we I would present for a period, then we would ask a question, and then stop them and say, okay, answer, in the chat, tell me what you think about this, this issue. And so people, so in other words, we brought in some interactive activities. This is more training than presentations, but as a way to get them actively participating
Actively
so
participating.
we use there's like a poll setup that you can do in Zoom, and we used polls, and we used questions with put your answers in the chat. But it was a way to get people actively participating versus just when's this over? I've got
When's
work
it
to do
finishing?
type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Yeah, the active participation is a huge part of it. I mean, the science suggests that if you can get your audience actively participating in that first 5 minutes, whether it's via chat or getting them to do something, even if it's say, okay, I'm going to be talking about this, just make a little, write on a note, piece of paper, something you would like to get from the next 20 minutes. And they all write it down. Okay, can you actually share that now? Can you
Yeah.
share that in chat? And they share it in chat, and suddenly you as presenter have got a load of useful data from them, which you can use during the presentation, and they have contributed. They feel part of it, and they're far more likely to stay engaged. And you've sort of broken through the 2D
Yeah.
into making
Yeah.
it a little bit more 3D. Yeah.
I love that. That's great. You talk about in your book nerves, and it's interesting because I think we've had some different speakers on here talking about or different guests talking about public speaking and nerves. How is it any different in the virtual space that where you have to work on how do you coach up people dealing with the nervousness of doing a presentation virtually?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. It's because it's changed. It's changed quite a bit. The people still get really nervous, but I meet quite a few people who say I'm much less nervous on virtual than I am face to face. And the reason for that is that they read out their presentations. It's that because I think the major reason that we get nervous is because of a fundamental need that human beings have to be in control.
Mm.
So in the early days of Zoom and Teams, when COVID first arrived and we were really trying to embrace the technology, people were a lot more nervous because they're going, oh my God, I'm setting up a breakout room. Who knows where people will go, if they'll ever return, or whether the computer will blow up. And then it didn't. And they went, oh, it worked. That was okay. And then they had a sense of control. And then people started going, you know what I can do? I'm trying to look for a piece of paper now, but I can put bits of paper on blue tack around my camera. I could just say it. I just read it without any mistakes, and I stay in control. And that is deadly. But the nerves thing is one. It's big part of it is control. So if you can, I say to people, and I'm aware of time. If I say to people, if you can look at what areas of this presentation you don't feel you have control over, look for, because it's the lack of control that is making you nervous. It might be I'm nervous because I don't feel I have enough knowledge. All right, look at that, because usually people actually do have enough knowledge, and they go, oh, I have got enough knowledge. All right, what else is making you nervous? The CEO is going to be there. The CEO. All right, can you do anything about the CEO being there? No, I can't. All right. So they're definitely going to be there. Yes, they are. All right. So do they want you to be good? Yes, they do really want me to be good. Are they a human being? Yes, they are. All right. The other bit you're worried about, their seniority or whatever, accept. Do
Mm,
your job, do the presentation well, but accept. So there's a thing of, can you do something about the thing that you feel out of control on? If you can, do something about it or put it off to another time, or just accept.
mm,
There's nothing I can do about this. I just have to roll with it, because I know for sure that when you start going, I cannot be nervous, it is a
mm.
sign of weakness and feeble-mindedness, you
Yeah.
know, that's when it's all goes wrong.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I know for me, like when I'm right about to go to speak, I'm like, you know, I use a lot of the statistics. You know, I'll mention a percentage of this or this many people, but then I'm like, I got to look at those, and I have to have those written down, because sometimes in the heat of the moment, I'll just forget a number. Or, you know what I mean? So it was nice to for me for I if I double check all those little statistical numbers, I feel more comfortable, because I know I can reach and grab it and I've got it in my head. You know, that's like the last thing I do before when I'm preparing is like it's remembering all the little numbers and things.
Oh,
And
I think that's brilliant. Yeah, just to
yeah,
have a few numbers up. I mean, look, oh, cheat it, you know, cheat here. I did actually print out some notes, which
yeah.
just to remind myself of things, and then I'd forgot. I made a beginner's mistake that the notes are in such small writing I can't actually read them anyway. But
Well, I have terrible eyesight, so all my notes are printed really large. So
yeah,
because
there
I
we
have
go.
bad
So,
eyesight, but I've learned to do that. Yeah.
okay,
So
well, that's a little note for everyone. It's a deliberate mistake by myself. Just make the words big enough so you can actually read them.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that's why I have my notes are all really big, so that I don't have to wear my reading glasses. I can sort of look like I don't wear glasses, but I do wear them for reading. So, so you know, we really, it's like a lot. There's a lot in this. I think the book is fantastic. I went through it all, and there's just so many good you touch on so many different things, like technical tips, how to structure your presentation, how to avoid you know, this death by virtual meeting. So how to get people engaged when they're appearing distant or distracted, disengaged. So there's so many tips in this that I'm encouraging people that, you know, if you're listening in, is to pick up this book, because I think there's a lot of lessons in here and it can really help you, you know, become a better virtual speaker, whether you're doing training or just having meetings. I think you've got a lot of really good information in this book that I really encourage leaders to take a look at it. Jack, how can people find out? And I understand too that you've got this, now you've got an online course coming on board. Tell us a little bit about the online course.
Yeah, so I've just started this online course. So there's three versions of it. You can get the free little taster version, or you can buy straight into it, which is a series of about 30 short videos and a book, plus there's various supporting materials and exercises, and you know, all the usual standard stuff. And also what I've done for the videos is I've got four random characters who are sort of idiot presenters who
Yes.
sort of demonstrate how not to do it on each video, and I play those characters. So I've tried to add a bit of humor and comedy to it as well. And then the third version is that every month I do a live stream where people can join, and if they've got a big presentation coming up, they can just ask me some questions or whatever, and that comes as standard as part of it.
Oh, that's
And then
great.
the
And
book is available on Amazon, and it'll be shortly available on other book sites, and you can get it in the States and most of Europe, obviously the UK as well, and India, I think, and Japan.
oh, it's outstanding. Yeah, I've watched some of the videos, and at least the intro video, and it's very funny. So I really encourage. How can people find out about the videos? Where do they go?
So if you go to my website, which is standupandeliver.co.uk, and across the top menu, you'll see about different items, and one of those is the online academy. Go into the online academy, and as I say, you can either just have a quick look at the taster where you get some free videos and materials, or go and enroll.
Okay. Very good. We're going to put links in the show notes for those resources. And I do encourage people to take a look at this book, Virtual Presentation Mastery. It's good. It's got a lot of good material. It's great source document for you. Everything is sort of in one book, in one place that you can look through it. And I think it's a fantastic piece of work. And I really appreciate Jack, you coming on the show and sharing this information. This has been fantastic. I really do appreciate it.
Not at all, John. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks again. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.